delicious lunch today. Thanks, Melissa, for delivery of the lunch.
She's really a good cook. You know,
She does outstanding work, particularly around the holiday season. This is a special holiday rendition lunch sandwich / salad. We'll call this meeting of the Amarillo Local Government Corporation Board of Directors to order here on Wednesday, December 7th, on Pearl Harbor Day. And also happy holidays to everybody in our district. There is a quorum present of the body, so we're able to conduct business. Richard Brown's been a little bit under the weather and is not with us here this morning. First item of business for the body is item number 2 on the agenda, the approval of the minutes from our previous meeting. In this case, the meeting was conducted on December 2nd, 2011.
November.
Do I hear a motion?
It was November 2nd.
Did I say December? I'm sorry. November 2nd.
I would move for
See, I'm all ready for Christmas. I'm sorry.
I would move for approval of the November 2nd.
All right.
and I would be happy to second.
Thank you. You guys are very cooperative.
If this is going to go like this is going to be a very long meeting.
There's been a motion and a second that the minutes from November 2nd, 2011 be approved as prepared. Any further comments? Hearing none, those in favor of that motion indicate so by saying aye. Those opposed, motion is approved. And the minutes are approved. Let's kind of deviate again in case there is anyone here that would like to make some public comment. The agenda does contemplate a closed session. And so per the agenda, we don't get to the public forum until after that closed session, and so that we don't force anyone to sit here and wait for that process to take place. Does anyone have any? We'll move item number 6 up on the agenda and take care of that now. Is there anyone here from the public that would care to make any comments related to the work of the Amarillo Local Government Corporation? Going once. Going twice. All right. We'll move to item number 3 then on the agenda, and this will be, I think, the bulk of our discussion today, and that's to get our collective hands and intelligence around decision-making points that are before us as this project rolls out, and approval points, who's going to be making those approvals, to what degree might we want to look at various items along the way. And by the way, I mean, they're permanent fixtures here, so I don't feel like they necessarily need introduction. Costa Jolly and Joe Esch are here from Wallace Jolly. Familiar faces, and Joe is in his holiday red. Well, very festive, Joe.
Or actually, I may be supporting Les's team.
Texas Tech. All right. Casco's around.
Well, I get really tired of seeing you in that jacket you wore today, but that's all right.
Okay, moving right on. Jared, in consultation and collaboration with Joe, has taken a stab at working through some decision points and information as to who the approving parties might be, what those items are, and some discussion about the approval level, the degree to which we look at these items.
New and improved.
Right. It is an updated version from the electronic one which we received. And again, the purpose is for us to all get on the same page here. Your document development committee, your committee met this morning to look at this, and that's why you're looking at a revised version. There were some revisions that were made as a result of our discussions and deliberations this morning. I think it's important that we adopt a kind of a bit of a philosophical look at these decision-making points. I think it's important that we keep in mind that we're not running this process. Wallace to Jolly has been contracted to the development partner, our private sector development partner. So we want to honor that relationship, I think, and stay out of their business to the degree that we need to stay out of their business, while at the same time meeting our responsibilities in terms of looking from the public side of the fence and meeting our fiduciary responsibility to the Amarillo community as this project moves forward. So there's a bit of a fine line there to walk so that we don't get in their way, and yet we retain the appropriate controls and steps along the way so that we can honor our responsibilities to the Amarillo public. I think another thing that we need to keep in mind over the next several months is that we might very well likely find it necessary to meet more routinely when we become accustomed, up to and including weekly, and maybe if things happen more quickly than that, a couple of times a week, if that's necessary. I think our goal would be not to stand in the way of moving the process forward with process kind of deadlines that we impose simply to get this body together now. We want to do it as efficiently, I think, along the way as possible. So, having made those opening comments, Jared, why don't you walk through the document that you enjoyed developing?
Thank you. This one's updated based on the work of the committee. Joan cooked it this morning. Don't know why, but the one I sent y'all did not print out the legend. It's at the top. Let me kind of run through that, and then we'll get into the meat of it.
I figured them all out except for one. I couldn't make out the
S. S in this case, and you'll see this in the columns of the group parties. S refers to this group's staff. That's inclusive. That's the folks from the city that are working on your behalf. That's Melissa. That's your outside legal counsel at the appropriate times. That's going to be your financial advisor, your bond counsel, etc. I lumped all that into one piece. These are all folks that in one way or another are working on behalf of this board. D is developer. I'm going to put WB. You're informed me that's good for Warner Brothers, so got that as D, developer. LGC-C, that's your document committee. Mr. Parkey, Mr. Brown. LGCB, that's this body, that's the board. NCRP, that's the normal city regulatory process. That's how things get permitted. That's how right-of-way gets handled, drainage, items like that. There's one abbreviation in the document that didn't make it up there, and that's CC, that's City Commission. So there will be times that the City Commission has things to do. Okay. Well, let's jump right into it. The first block of business is titled Agreements. Agreement number one that will happen, and this will actually end up in the long term in two agreements. The first will be a land lease between the City of Amarillo and the local government corporation. The first land lease that you will see will be, of course, this block that is the police station in the old courts building, and the half block, this the south side of the buildings. The parties to that document will be the City of Amarillo and this local government corporation. Obviously, that'll go through a full negotiation, review, and approval process. So the City Commission will have a formal action. It's a real property transaction. This body will have a formal action.
And the city commission will be after the LGC.
The City Commissions will probably be first. We're offering to lease that to the LGC. It's the City Commission's property today.
That lease document will be drafted by the city attorney.
Fortunately, he has a good personality. We have other attorneys. Yeah. That's why I put you between us. The next item, a large focus, a lot of the staff efforts and the committee efforts, and all of Jolly's efforts, is the lease and development agreement. Now, this document we're doing today is specific to the hotel. You will see a very similar document with the in-town as we go. We're trying to keep it in one tower. That lease and development agreement is, for all intents and purposes, the rule book by which the project will be managed, and probably more importantly than that, how it will be operated and run on a long-term basis. We talked a little bit about that before. That is a huge, huge document that has very far-reaching impact. Obviously, that document is being worked on by the staff, by the developers, the committee, ultimately coming to this body for consideration and approval. Parties will be the local government corporation and Wallace Pajala. The next ones, the next three especially, are condensed a little bit. These are subsidiary agreements that are contemplated in the lease and development agreement, but they are not agreements to which this body is a signatory or a party. This is the operating lease, that's the operating lease for the hotel, the franchise agreement, architectural contract, construction contract, operator agreement, etc. These are all the parts that Wallace Pajala puts in play to make the projects. They are not documents to which this body is a signatory. Okay? I think we need to talk a little bit about what is this body's role in those particular agreements. Would suggest that this body's role is to ultimately review and approve those documents within a very specific set of circumstances. Those circumstances being, these subsidiary agreements, are they in compliance and are they consistent with the existing master development agreement and the lease and development agreement that's under negotiation? These are not documents that we would suggest when the board does this review and ultimately approval. We're not looking at the business points or the business relationship, the negotiations, etc., that have occurred between Wallace Pajala and that party. What this board is looking at are those documents consistent with the master development agreement and the leasing development agreement. Are there provisions in that document that do affect the LGC that then are acceptable to the LGC? And what we're talking about there is primarily going to be things like an assignment clause, a termination clause, a step-in clause. Those are things that, should they occur, this body obviously will be impacted. So I do think you should look at those. Beyond that, I don't know that we envision this board, having any deeper part and parcel of that.
For example, a fee schedule for the not our issue.
And how that's grown. I think, the lease agreement, the franchise agreement with the hotel, obviously they're subject to all kinds of other things. The flags agreement, how they're going to make the hotel work, what's their business plan, business model. You have to have the financial assurance that it's going to work. But it's not the body's place to interject between those various parties. What you're looking for is it works with the lease and development agreement, the master developer agreement. If there ultimately is an assignment, if Wallace Pajala was to change operators, they're the pros, that's their business to cause that to happen. But this body needs the approval of that. You won't be negotiating it, you won't be selecting it. You will be assuring the public that if that occurs, the party that's being brought forth is a good and acceptable party to continue the operation of the hotel. If there has to be a step-in, if there has to be a step-in, you need to know that the provisions are in place that don't conflict with your lease and development agreement, so that if that occurs, you could do so, and to do it as simply as possible. Okay. Pretty good on that? All right.
Let me ask a question. So, because I know this came up before, but in the lease and development agreement, is the wording in there? I mean, because the thing came up, and this whole thing as to when we were getting into the process of, the financials and all that, and would it work and whatever it may be, that the city, or I guess the LGC, would not necessarily be a risk, but that we would have a say, on, let's just say, does the leasing development agreement then stipulate that we would get a Hilton, Embassy Suites, whatever, versus Joe's Hotel and Dining Hall. I mean, because when I see franchise agreement here, I see that to mean an agreement with the franchisee that's going to operate a hotel.
No, franchisee, well, the operator is the franchisee. Yeah, I'm sorry, if I may.
Sure.
The flag would be the franchisor, and so you're going to have certain expectations of the franchisor that you make sure it meets certain quality. Joe's Hotel and Dining Hall.
Did I say Joe's?
Is a fine establishment.
That's where Freudians live at best.
But that's okay. I'll see if I honor the Bulldogs again.
But what I'm asking of, okay, I mean, does the lease and development agreement say that you will find somebody, whether you use A, B, or C would be up to you, but A, B, and C are gonna have these specifications and requirements?
More along the line.
Yes.
Yes. And then that's why it comes back to the need for a quick look to make sure it's an acceptable person.
But it's not a legal requirement, it's just, I mean, the thing that would just, because you're saying we are protecting, we are looking at the, protecting the agreement that we have and what's in the agreement. But our agreement is with Wallace Jolly, but ultimately whether it's a Wyndham, Hilton, whatever, is up to them, although it won't be a Fairfield Marriott, because that's not what we're looking to.
You're going to set a full service standard. You're going to have certain approval rights over the flag to make sure that the flag that is selected meets with a standard. And so that you typically what's often done is as those standards exist at the time of approval, because recognizing that standards do change over time, and that way, if there's a change in flag later on, that it has to be consistent with those standards as they existed at the time when the lease was entered into. And that is to protect the community if they wanted a full-service hotel of this quality, that later on, if the flag changes, it doesn't go down without your approval.
So the lease and development agreement will actually speak to the threshold standard, right? Or it's not going to a reasonable.
The threshold standard and importantly, the opportunity to review and approve that as we're laying out here. We can't anticipate all those details at this moment, but that's why the license of the lease and development agreement is so important. It gives us that framework for addressing these future agreements and otherwise.
It's because that the flag is going to drive who the operator can be, because the operator has to meet certain requirements to make sure that they can have that flag. So that's going to give you certain protections over the operator. The flag is going to give you certain comparisons that says, here's a Wyndham, here's a Hilton product, here's a Marriott as they exist at the time of approval. That sets a level of expectation as to what that actually means in broad sense, and gives you a frame of future boards, a frame of reference should they need to consider any changes.
But from our standpoint, once we set out these specific parameters, whether it's Hilton or Marriott, really is never mind to us, as long as it has met those standards that we set forward.
Exactly. You meet those thresholds, and you can change operators without changing flags. Change flags and change operators. Can be several things just over the course of business. Wallace Jolly will come back to this body. This is going to now change operators and or flags. This is what it will be. This is how this fits and matches in accordance with these agreements. This body looks and says, yeah, we think that honors the spirit, honors the quality. This is what we're trying to do. We agree. Or no, it is XYZ's, roadside inn, and that's not. And therefore, you need to go bring us somebody else. The business part of that negotiation is theirs. The approval of who and what is yours. Okay, good question, good question. The architectural contract, of course, this is one of the early on deals, but the architect contract, same thing. The architectural and engineering firms are working for Wallace Valley is working for this body. You, of course, need that look-in on that contract for those same basic reasons that you would on the operator, the franchisee, etc. Construction contractor, same and similar deal. Operator agreement is different than operator lease, but you're still looking at the same stuff. The operator lease is how Wallace Valley puts them on the property, agreements, the conditions under which they would do so. Hear silence. Okay. Economic development incentives. If you'll recall from the efforts this summer, there are many different economic development incentives that are part of the project. Things like the rebate of the local portion of the hotel occupancy tax generated by that hotel. That's a specific set of statutes, that's a specific deal. Ultimately, that goes to the city commission. That's who approves that. There will be tiers consideration in the projects, of course. Obviously, the tiers board is the approving entity, and then they're structured such that they take things to Potter County Commissioners Court ultimately.
Just as is any other tiers process, the project has been approved today.
Any other tiers
Same
project?
process.
The economic development incentives are pretty procedurally driven. They're spelled out in various state statutes and state agencies how they work. Not sure at the end of the day that the LGC would actually be the party to any of them. You don't receive hotel occupancy taxes, so you can't rebate it. You don't receive sales tax, so you couldn't rebate it. We're leaving that one wide open. I think a good caveat that was raised by Joe and the group. We do need to be sure that if, because of the relation, mainly because of the land transfers, if that necessitates an action by this board, it of course would be brought to you. But right now, I'm not sure that that would happen. I wouldn't say this list is 100% of the agreements that you receive related to the hotel, but I think substantially walk over here. So this is the paper part of the project. Meet the board's general approval.
Well, I think
Expectations.
it's a good directional piece of paper, here's what we're gonna go through, here's how we're gonna do it, and kind of sets the timeline so that we can manage getting all this done. And so I think it's very well played out.
Okay, let's now move into,
Joe, let me ask you this, any fatal, you see any fatal flaws in that, or anything being overlooked? To your knowledge, in terms of major, on the agreement piece?
No, I think we're a standard process. And so what we've done this far is kind of said, okay, here's the major things we're going to review. You can anticipate there's going to be a number of other steps and things that this board will see. As it relates to the hotel, it has the majority of those items, and there are other decisions before coming. There, in any project, especially one as complex as this, there will be twists and turns that you can't anticipate. And so I can't say it's complete because we don't know what we don't know yet. And so I think it's been put together with a lot of input from a lot of parties that are reflective of all sides.
I just think if at the end of today we can get the general consensus from the LGC as a whole that we see these major pieces and parts, we know which ones are coming back and what they're coming back for. That'll help us further refine this, and I think down the road we'll have just huge dividends to keeping that going. Okay, moving into the next one, deliverables for the master development agreement. There's two on this page, the development schedule. That was contemplated back in February. Of course, that comes back to this body ultimately for full approval. The same thing with the project budget. The project budget will not come to you as a, we're done, here it is, let's go. You will see that as you go through the process of doing the project design. You'll see it at various stages so that we can all track if we're fitting in the box or we need to do something a little different. those were spelled out and preordained back in February, so I think probably good on those. Okay, next one, selection of the contractor. The project has been proposed to you by your developer to be done through construction manager at risk form. That's what this speaks to. This is how we see that process running through. You create the RFQ, request for qualifications, and the RFP, request for proposals process. That is largely done by your developer. I think your committee can review that just as it relates to potential impact to the LGC. These guys are the pros. The people that they're going to hire are going to be the pros. That's their deal to structure. They know what they're looking for. Legal review, that's to ensure this body, because your construction contractor, not in the hotel, but in the MPEV and the project, will be ultimately receiving a lot of public funds. So we need that legal review. That's substantially complete. I think they're still looking at just some little points for review of the legal counsel.
To the point, because the way the hotel is being built privately, it is not a requirement to follow any process. This is something that we're looking at because it's consistent with what would have to happen with the parking garage and the MPEV itself.
And the desire to have one, do all three pieces.
Well, the opportunity to have one. Right now, we're going through 3 separate ones that provides us the opportunity to select one that could be multiple projects or one for each project. And it provides us that flexibility. But it certainly isn't a foregone conclusion that we would have one do everything.
Part of the process that you go through is a series of candidate interviews, and I still didn't fix my misspelling. That's done largely by the developer with assistance from staff. The committee this morning focused on what's the appropriate role for your staff in that. We believe that's to observe and to assist Wallace Bajali as they go through that. That's not for us to substitute their judgment as far as making the recommendation of whom should be ultimately selected for that. If we accept that, we go to the next point, which is the final selection of the contractor. This is where Wallace Bajali recommends to you. Do you think Acme or Acme plus Bravo plus Charlie? These are the best, the highest ranked, the most capable. Here's where, here's why, here's what. The committee would look at that. Committee's in concurrence, they forward it to this board. This board should hear that same series of questions and answers. Meets approval. You formalize that acceptance of that contract. Again, this group or multiple groups is working for Wallace Bajali.
What do you guys think about our role as described in terms of the selection of the contractor, basically being at the tail end of the process is managed and operated, and they bring forward a recommendation that we approve. That's really what these are.
Well, I mean, only the possibility, certainly not a probability, but the possibility that one of us that's not on the committee, document committee, whatever at the last minute would come up with some objection to the party being selected. Because then the cat's out of the bag, so to speak, right? I mean,
I don't understand what you mean by that.
well, I mean, the way that this goes, this board in its entirety will not see this until, in essence, it's almost cut and dry.
Well, and that's the case with the committee as well. I mean, the recommendation will be flowing from Wallace Bajali to the committee, and then ultimately to the full body.
Well, of course, surely there'll be, even if it's, I mean, there'll be some kind of communications going back and forth.
Sure.
Well, we had anticipated, as was the process that selected the architect for the first phase, that there would be representation, observing, participating, asking questions throughout the process, throughout the RFQ and ranking, throughout the RFP and recommendation. So we anticipated that the community public would be represented in those steps, and that's certainly up to y'all as to how you assign those individuals and participate.
There wasn't an LGC, that the city and the AI were part of the architectural review process. Wallace Specialty made the ultimate decision. In fact, there were differing opinions and thoughts about the different contractors, but Wallace Specialty made the ultimate decision, so that there were staff and, what is it? Oh, yeah, okay. There were staff and others involved running into it, and particularly as it related to the local.
In fact, we reviewed the process ahead of time. We went through and they participated in the interviews. You were also, so we anticipate something similar.
There shouldn't be any surprises
Yeah.
by the time it gets to.
That's all I was trying to avoid, was a public surprise that will make us all cringe.
I think it's a good point, and Jim, not to speak for Gary and Lynn, but that was a pretty good point of discussion this morning. Whom and what was appropriate through that interview phase. Gentlemen, I think the guidance leading this morning was that would be at the staff level. There's nothing that prevents that from being members less than a quorum of this body, if that's an appropriate use. I think the committee was leaving it that the staff would be observing, assisting, participating with Wallace Bertali, but again, that's their employee at the end of the day. If we have the local knowledge, or we see or learn or know something, they've been gracious enough to include us in that. Oh, wait a minute, we know that last building fell in. Something to that effect.
Well, I think what we need to know is that, and be assured of, that this is a qualified contractor. It's not Costa's son who just got out of architectural school doing his first construction job. And we need to be very comfortable with that, because if something were to happen and we have to interface and work with them, we want to be satisfied that we've got somebody that's capable, and that's all that's about. I mean, you're right.
Okay. I mean, we are given an opportunity at the end of that process. If there is a fatal flaw that somehow turns up, we can say no and start the process over again, or modify the process, or take some sort of steps to attempt to cure that situation. But again, I think it's important to keep in mind that, as Jared has mentioned on a couple of occasions, I mean, the contractual relationship is going to be between the contractor and Wallace Specialty Development Partners.
And Costa, I wasn't trying to encourage you.
The people that are kind of expressing an interest in this are top class contractors, GCs. So I don't think you guys will have any issues with those, but we'll certainly it'll be for the request for qualifications. We're going to solve their qualifications. Everybody will have an opportunity to
But if we're asked questions about our oversight and management of this process, it's easy for us to say, we'll have an opportunity to interface and make sure these are highly qualified people. That's all we need.
Are all these, like when you go to the final contractor selection, are all of us going to be in the room at the same time? Is staff going to have their own meeting and the developer have their own meeting, and then us, or we all going to be doing it at the same time?
The way I see that working on, at that point, when you're down to that last line, Wallace Pajali will have formally recommended, we've done this process, we followed X, Y, and Z. We recommend Acme Construction. Okay. Mr. Committee members, we recommend them for the following reasons. Here's the financial capacity of the bond. Here's the insurance capability, cash flow, similar projects. Right. They'll justify and prove that to the staff and to the committee. Okay. Presuming the committee has, yes, we agree, we've looked at that, you've done it. It will be the committee then carrying forward to this body as a whole. Gotcha. We did this, and this.
In the interview process, though, you have the developer and staff, or whoever else is there, in the same room at the same time.
Marcus, please check me on this, but there are two steps. First, we'll go through and we'll get qualifications. And from those qualifications, we'll shortlist it to a group of 5. Then from those 5, we would certainly be informing you who that 5 was and why we did the qualifications, because there's a matrix out there that helps us rank the respondents. Then from that, you'll request the RFP. The RFP comes back, and then from that, you rank, do your interviews again if you need, select and rank your top folks from there. That would be the recommendation that says, here's our ranking and here's our first tier. If you say no, that first tier, we had experience with them on whatever, and it was a horrible experience, and we just can't do business with them, we have these concerns, you have to have a good reason for rejecting them, I think. And then from there, you can select, go to the number 2, and once they're approved, then you start the negotiations on the contract. And if you can't reach, you stop all discussions with the others until you reach a point where you have an agreement or can't move forward, and if you can't, then you go to number 3. That's generally right.
And you can never go back. If you take number 1 and for whatever reason, we're not going to do that, number 1's gone. Forever.
Unless you
For that process.
For that
Unless you
process.
start,
Unless you
unless
start
you
the process.
reboot.
That way you're not starting the whole thing again and losing that amount of time. That's,
And you're not allowed to play one versus the other. You're selecting them on the basis of the qualification skills.
so before you get to that short listing, you've already gone through that they're qualified contractors. Now you're from that qualified contractor, you're trying to make sure that you get the best combination of team, responsiveness, general conditions, those types of things.
Now, just one point of clarification. You're talking about all of these together, one that could potentially do, there's one project or both or three. If you just were talking about the hotel project, then none of those rules would apply.
They don't have to.
Because that doesn't involve really city resources and the like.
It's not a requirement for the hotel.
Okay, I'm just making sure I got it.
That's correct.
But nonetheless, I think
If
we
you're going to tie
generally,
them together, though,
Yeah, that then requires us to follow the typical governmental process.
And at this point, there has been no reason that has come forward to suggest that we wouldn't want to follow that. I mean, obviously, you remain open if there was some really positive reason to do it, but at this point, there's been no reason to even consider not following.
that public process makes sense in this instance. To follow that process, although they don't necessarily have to.
Well, except that you're a little less nimble
Well,
to respond to unanticipated events. Right.
that's true.
And so at some point, there would be the ability to carve out the hotel to allow you to do something different if the developer so desired.
That does exist.
Okay.
Is there any preference given to local?
Well, if you recall the architectural process that we went through selecting architects, we reached out to every architect that was in the community. Because you're local, we reached out to you. It does not mean that you're special. You still need to make sure that you can do the job. In the case of the architectural team, we had a combination of local and national firms that participated. I'm hearing that a number of local firms are already teaming up with some of the larger firms. And so you might see that yet again. I don't believe you have a local preference ordinance.
No.
And so there is nothing that directs you to do that. And we'd be following the laws in the state to make sure that we did this appropriately. But we are making sure that we reach out to the local contractors to give them the opportunity to participate.
I think it's fair to say we have a strong desire to do what we can to encourage local participation.
Yes.
All the way up and down the line of this process.
But there's no doubt about it.
all good questions. That cover the contractor selection. Turn to page 2, let's get into the fun stuff.
He's kind of sick.
Okay, project design elements. Now you're starting to see this, you're looking at it, you know what you're going to end up with. First item under project design, of course, would be the location and the site plan. This is where these improvements are physically sitting, how are they set on the lot, how do they interface with the rights of way, streets, anything else that's around it. You've seen a conceptual drawing of that, everybody has. It's time to turn the concept into what really fits and what it'll, all the scales will be right. That comes through, of course, the developer, the staff, that silly acronym that NCRP, I did, Normal City Regulatory Process, committee, and the board. A couple of thoughts. This is regulatory compliance review at this point because they need the certainty to know what they're proposing and what this body is approving really can be done. We've got to keep on the table. We need ultimately a decision on 6th Street. The schematic, the conceptual schematic at 6th Street closed. So that's a discussion that needs to take place. They need that to keep moving with what they're doing. Do you close it? Do you leave it as is? Do you do something in between? All that will affect how these pieces and parts fit. Okay? This is where you will see the general fit of how the streetscapes, the right-of-ways, those things begin to fit together. Again, coming back to this body through an iterative process for an ultimate approval.
Well, speaking of the 6th Street issue, Melissa, can you tell us how that traffic circulation study might provide us some assistance in terms of that decision?
Sure. We just entered into a contract with Jacobs, a large consultant firm that has multiple specialties, and they're doing a comprehensive circulation study, wayfinding design, which is signage design for wayfinding, as well as a PID analysis. The circulation study includes several components, one of which is to look at the closure, potential closure or keeping open 6th Street, that one block of 6th Street. But along with that, of course, you can't look at that in a vacuum and look at other streets, all of that circulation around the city center. So their scope is to look at potential improvements to circulation around the civic center area. We're not going to be changing the TxDOT roadways for major arterials or actually dispersal streets, right? Through there, but I think the focus will be on those east-west streets and how the closure of that one block or leaving it open or whatever can impact the other streets. Do you look at one-way versus two-way, perhaps changing some of the one-ways there to two-way? So when, for example, a gangway's out, there's lots of ways to get out, not just one way. And so they'll be doing that analysis really over the next 60 days, which should be pretty quick. So they'll have that in time for this. Once this, of course, then there's a local decision to be made. They'll basically provide the factual information and a recommendation for us locally to be able to analyze and make a decision on what to do.
And the conceptual drawing does show it closed, but one of the reasons it did is because the cost was based on encroaching into the roadway. And so whether it's closed or there's just some portion of narrowing, that was based in the numbers that were put forward. And so to the extent that you keep it on the site without encroaching in 6th Street, you do change. There are implications to that.
And I mean, just to clarify, really the study isn't to look at that particular aspect. That's assumed that there's going to be some encroachment onto 6th Street and that at a minimum it's going to be narrowed. But the study is to look at closure of that block and the balance of pedestrian safety and access, the possibility for event space and so forth with vehicular traffic and movement.
So timing-wise, when do we have to have that decision?
I would suggest sooner you can get to that decision, the better. I mean, they're making real-time decisions, based on what that answer is.
Part of it's you're going to get to it through some of the programming discussion and the design. By that time frame, you're going to have made that decision. And so that's 90 days?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, probably within 90 days. From the time that you start that design process. You may also, as a part of this, we haven't talked about it right now, it's not contemplated, but one of the issues is the blockage. You may do a sightline study. It's common in localities where people say, well, hey, you're going to block the view of my building from here if you do X. Then if you anticipate the height of some of the structures that might be in there from whether it's foliage or what have you, you can look and figure out how that does block the view corridor or how it approaches from different types of aspects. And that may be another thing that's requested on the part of the evaluation. Because there are those scientific elements that we'll talk about, what you can do, and then there's those really feel good, the American Bandstand version of fun to dance to, I'll give it 75. You know?
Jacob's schedule is 6 weeks. I said 60 days, we've got holidays in between all that, so I'm gonna give them a little leeway, but their schedule is to be done with that analysis in 6 weeks, and then of course, we have to, and when I say locally, it includes you guys. I mean, we all have to,
Well, Jared, correct me if I'm wrong, ultimately that decision ultimately is likely to fall to the city commission's lap. We're talking about
The approval of that decision, whatever that decision is, will fall to the city commission. If you are closing streets,
right away.
if you are, shifting your right-of-way lines, if you're abandoning rights-of-way, after that's gone through the process, and it may well, depending on what it is, go through the traffic commission and or planning and zoning.
That's that normal city
regulatory process.
On top of that, you potentially could impact any utilities that are in the street and look into those elements as well. So there may be other things that need to be dealt with that have to be addressed. Essentially, if you kind of looked at it from a calendar standpoint, if you took 9 days from the start, you realize that there's a response that can happen in the architectural agreement, and it is mid-December essentially. You're probably not starting the architectural agreement or our kickoff until January, mid to late, quite frankly, based on where we're at today. So then you're looking at 3 months, so you're essentially looking at April, May timeframe of when, just spitballing it based on the schedules. Now, on the architectural agreement, we are going to be, once we have worked through the issues and have the concurrence of this body, we'll then ask them to tighten up their schedule and refine that to see where they're at, and so that number may change depending on how this all works out.
Well, at this stage on that issue, none of us have a whole lot more to go on other than just our personal preferences or personal ideas. I mean, you don't have traffic facts. We haven't made progress in terms of design. We just have opinions. You need more than opinions to make that decision.
I think there's a couple of issues within that. What Joe was alluding to earlier is that to the extent that the hotel cannot encroach, then there could be a cost element that's involved, and that's where we're interested in knowing that sooner than later. Whether it's open or not, as long as we can encroach and have that footprint that the architect was looking for, whether it stays open or not.
That's the biggest element because you have to go to the floor, which is not much.
I don't think that's the side of the Jacobs study. I mean, that's something that needs to be decided, like you said, sooner than later. There's nothing holding up that decision other than making that level.
And if there are drawings that show that encroachment, if we had those, we could start on that part of it now.
There's conceptual. I mean,
Are they scaled enough
How far is it?
to know, to see?
I think by the time the traffic.
They are, but they're not. I mean, yes, you can see where they're at. I mean, one of the reasons we looked at on the test well is where we're putting the footprint for the garage. But what you'll hear back from the architects is, hey, we did this as a test fit and we haven't designed it yet. So yeah, you could make some decisions on that, but I'm not gonna back it up because we haven't got the final program, so therefore we don't know, doing the program, what it's really going to, what the footprint's really going to look like. And that's going to be your wiggle room.
And whatever is available that they're comfortable with, we'd be glad to let them start
I
processing.
think you actually have it because we provide it when we're looking at the utilities. I think that's already been provided in.
Some of the staff may have it, I don't know that I do.
I think it's in the city. Jerry?
Jerry Danforth?
Yes.
Okay.
You guys scan the CAD drawings of these today.
Okay. All right, back into the project design elements and those approval points of this project. First one that you'll see is the location in the site plan. Again, that's how all the pieces and parts, where they're going to sit, where they're going to face, how's all that going to work together, subject to this body's review and approval. probably won't be a single point in time. We'll probably see that as it builds up. We can turn each of these individual items into a page in and of itself. Trying to get past that part. Next one, streetscape layout. It's a good discussion. Joe had some good recommendations on this, so I'm gonna punt it a little bit. The streetscape layout is a pretty pro forma design. It's in your downtown urban design standards. We've had many of them run through the process. Don't know that that's necessarily where we need to bring those to this body, because you're talking about a little layout piece, and I think that'll work. When you move to the next one, the architectural style elevation, the streetscape will certainly have an impact on the elevations of these facilities, these facades. You'll begin to see that, part and parcel also of the site plans. So I think you'll have that look that you need into how the streetscape, and maybe it's probably more fair not to focus on streetscape with these open spaces. There's a large open space at the third base corner of the impact. This corner that would be right out here. Large open space. It needs to tie to the streetscape. The streetscape ties across back to the hotel, to the parking garage.
Just needs to flow. It needs to look like
Personally,
God intended it to be. Patchwork to it.
So that, I think that will be there, but that'll be 2 bites, 2 sets of approval by this body, your general location and site plan, and the architectural elevations of these actual buildings. You'll be saying, yeah, that is what we want to look like.
Might be,
We want the Mediterranean villa over here.
might be important to point out too, that, I mean, just because there might be an administrative approval, doesn't mean you're not gonna know what's going on. I mean, you're gonna know every step of the way, everything that's happening. So just because there might be, correct, just because there was an administrative approval doesn't mean you're gonna have any idea what the streetscape looks like. What, did I not say that right?
That'll be accomplished via staff, basically a status report, the project
Yeah.
status reports.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
As those other 2 build, this is part and parcel of it, you'll certainly see that.
You won't drive up here Sunday, what the hell is that?
If it ends up being a Xeris core, you'll be the first to know. Black plastic and white rock.
Oh.
Okay, those 3 elements, those 3 steps. Does that meet the approval of the group? Okay. Design process. We had a lot of discussion this morning on the development program. We've kind of twisted that a little bit. I think the piece of development that we focused the most on was, kind of the thinking of the deal. So the way we've got it proposed at the moment, the development program, again, this is the hotel, that's the developer, that's the flag, that's the franchisee, that's their stuff. The schematic design of that hotel and the general theming of such, I would say could and should come back to this board. I think though when it does, the focus should most properly be on those open and public spaces that are included in it. As an example, how the 1-bedroom queen rooms are laid out and fit versus how the 2 twins. We need to get out of that. What the countertop is going to look like in a less expensive room versus the more. What I see being important, most important to the community, to the projects as a whole, what is that, fit and feel of that hotel? What do those open and public and function spaces, what are they going to be and how are they going to work? I don't see us telling them what type of a top table they're going to use, but you might want to know how many can be put into a particular space. So
Nut colors.
that was,
That's the thing.
it just, the theme is that general style, but literally countertop's going to be that with the carpets.
You don't want to see that.
I don't think, no, sir. I don't want to do that at home.
Under this proposal, you won't be.
They don't let you do that at home, as I understand.
They don't do a good job, they're gonna stay in the law.
That's the bottom line.
That's the bottom line, so that, they're gonna do what they need to do to make it right, so.
Sure.
Well, and we've got a whole sequence of professionals that this is their business. You let them do that. This is easier than what's on committee.
It is, isn't it?
Okay,
It's all men,
do what?
because it's all men.
We didn't say that.
Well, it'll never get built if there's a bunch of women.
You open.
No.
What's the next time?
Okay,
Let's drop that remark.
so the general
Make sure your
development,
name, please. Get it up that closer to you.
I'll have to let the wife.
the general development program is the purview of the developers and those professionals. The schematic design, the general theming, that's gonna go through the process of working with your staff, with your committee, with your board. Coming back to approval, focusing predominantly on the public and open spaces. What you're looking at is first floor hotel.
Big picture.
Put in my one requirement, I want the restaurant to serve breakfast 5 days a week.
Not seven.
7 days a week. Yeah.
7's good, but at least 5.
Some of us live down.
This is just.
Some people go to town on the weekend, or you think that all the deals are just gonna be
He didn't
start
say
on
which
Wednesday,
Friday.
not
No,
Monday.
that was entirely from a selfish viewpoint. I'm gonna be across the street from it at least 5 days a week, breakfast. Okay, preliminary design, construction documents, permitting. You're getting into the nuts and bolts. And I can only guess based on the airport what construction documents are gonna look like here, but you're probably looking at 4 to 6 rolls of plan sets. That will be about that big. There will be processes where, just as in any other thing that's constructed in Amarillo, your building safety team's gonna be going through that. City's got some construction guys, they'll be looking at that, of course, all those design pros will be the ones that put them. I don't see that that comes back to this board. No. You'll lock up for years going through some of that stuff. Here's the fallback to that, though. If we accept that the preliminary construction and permitting phases, that's kind of a behind the scenes, it's a normal process for getting something built in. The thing we've put back in that wasn't in your earlier draft is the value engineering phase. If, as we go through this, for some reason you need to start into some alternative pieces and parts, because of how the budgets have been driven or how design elements drove the budget, the LGC needs to be able to participate and ultimately approve that process. Because at this point, you're actually talking about changing something that you've likely already agreed to. So I don't see it as getting into the weeds or the minutia, but you've previously said, yeah, we know it's gonna be like that. Now we're saying, for other reasons, it needs to be a little different.
Really a control board to ratchet things back into reality if they need to be ratcheted.
Change the scope. Let's say that you go from a stain grade to a paint grade finish on some of your wood, then you're gonna want to look at it, because that's changed the appearance that you have. If there are large elements,
Right.
well, because it gets into thematic changes.
Well,
You're telling one over here, right?
if something becomes way too expensive and starts to put pressure on, is this really workable? Does this really make sense as far as sustaining deal? Then we're gonna want to take a look at that.
Part of it is the changing in time, depending on, you're asking for maybe a point of time. If the world changes and costs change on a certain type of material, copper goes up, or this material goes down, or whatever, that's when you may see some changes. Or if through this process, through the thematic, you want X added, it was never part of, or we do, I mean, whoever it is wants to have something added, it wasn't the original assumption, that may change the product, and that may say, hey, wait, that's not possible at this budget, and then you get into decision-making on how to move forward. It's a very rational, logical process that it should be expected that you could come back and take a look at those things.
Good with that? it gets easy from here on down. We'll talk about the money, financing, funding commitment. Of course, again, recall that in this case, this is Wallace Majali funding for the hotel. It's on here because we want the MPEV and everything else to also look and act in a similar fashion. But you'll have your proof of funds, escrow terms and conditions, draw schedule. Those last two can actually be part and parcel of one likely. That's the control point of the funding. We've got a schedule, we've got a budget, we've got a design, we've got a final cost, we have sufficient funds to make it happen. You've closed the totality of the loop of the project at that point. Which takes you to the final one, which is notice to proceed. Go. Thank you. Job well done. Get to go.
Anyone see any major flaws, concerns, suggestions regarding this general layout of decision making?
I would like to propose, can we as quickly as possible assign dates to each of these points? I mean, these are major milestones that we're looking at. Now, I know maybe every single one would not have a date, or we don't know when that will occur. But I just wonder if we cannot assign some dates to these. And then, you know, as we meet, I'd just be interested in knowing, did we meet that date, or did we not? And if we didn't, I think it's our responsibility to hold, Jolly accountable, but also to make sure that we're proceeding on a timetable with these. And I don't know if there will be large discrepancies on what these dates should be, but I just think.
If I could suggest, I think the thing that we should set a target for, and we've tried to do this a couple of times, but we've learned a bunch between here and there. That leasing development agreement is really going to be the trigger. Wallace Pajali's completion of negotiation of the architectural. Once those are in place, I think you can start then setting, maybe not just this occurs by February 15th, but you can set up windows. LDA, leasing development agreements in place, in force, in effect, January 15th. We need 30 days for this to occur. You can start building into that, and I want to speak to the other coast to it. A lot of the stuff as you get into some of the design deals, I don't think they can put the time to it other than those windows until some of those conditions preceding those agreements actually get the stamp on it.
Well, and I understand that, and I certainly don't want to fill the newspaper with missed deadline stories. But I do think, I do think one of our roles is, I don't think we want to move too fast so we can make mistakes, but I just think we all need to make sure that we don't wind up here being 2016 and saying, I don't want to put the sign up that says hotel coming 2014 and it's 2016 and we're finally getting it. Not that it would happen, but I just really feel that having a timetable in place and us being able to monitor what's going on with that timetable and if we need to help or say what's going on here or whatever it may be, I just think it would be something because that's really big.
No, as much as anything else in terms of kind of keeping the thing moving along, a lot of it is going to be dependent on our side of the fence. The commitment that 7 of us have to get together maybe on a weekly basis when it is necessary to do so, or twice a week or whatnot, so that we are not an impediment to moving the agenda forward along the way.
And you made mention of that earlier, Jerry. Could I make a suggestion?
Sure.
Not me, but you guys that are busy and have schedules. I would suggest that we set a date. We have a meeting every Wednesday unless canceled. Because what I'm scared of is that, you guys would be too busy. And if a meeting's called to the last minute, you just can't make it. I just think
Just add on 6:30 in the morning meetings, really.
no, nothing good happened before 10 o'clock.
Most of us are not delivering babies at that time of the day.
He's not either.
He
set a schedule. Right now, we didn't have the kickoff.
And if I may add to that, we have most of these milestones in the schedule that we have, so once we get that kickoff, if you will, we'll adjust those dates very easily. And put dates for these.
And I understand that, but I think it is our responsibility to, I mean, we all have the same goal, but I mean, ultimately, this is our responsibility to the public. And I think part of it is doing our job to make sure that everything is remaining on time and on schedule, and knowing if it's not, why it's not, because people are going to be asking, but I think it's our responsibility.
If we put a sign that says coming 2000 and then leave the last two digits, we're safe, because we've got some fun.
That's a sign of confidence, but if you want to do that, then.
No, I
Sometime before 2017.
well.
What's your really that Dave Wallace story about coming next spring?
Oh, you know, that was a true story. The mall coming soon, and the posted right off, the sign fall down, you put up new sign. And coming this fall.
Coming this fall.
Didn't say which
That's a
one.
good, that's a true story though.
Let's get the thing kicked off. That's what we gotta focus on.
And I think the schedule is critical for everybody. I mean, I think it holds both parties responsible to the timelines that are in it, and it's gonna be the driver. We'll have someone specifically focus on nothing but the schedule and adjusting it as things change.
Well, Jarrett and Joe, how do we get at Les's point, practical at this stage? I mean, and Glenn's right. I mean, the game doesn't start until that lease and development agreement is, so, I mean, some of us kind of have that on our brain right now in terms of, and that's what we've got to do next. And this other stuff, we'll start worrying about it once we get this major milestone met. But something on the order of some sort of nod to that timing thing moving forward. And a lot of this stuff can happen. I mean, stuff's going to be happening concurrently.
Part of it, what we can do, we already have a schedule on many of the elements that take place from the design development. And those are allocated a window of time. And that window of time, each element kind of moves along with the other. So what we look to do is once we have this wrapped up and you're ready to execute, then we'll start to see if we can shrink that window of time. It has some pleasure in it right now. So you can take those schedules that we have and say, if you anticipate the approval of the agreement in X, here's the waterfall of events that happen after that and the timing of when it gets done. If you look at, and we did previously looking at an opening date and back up from there, here's what has to happen when to make that opening date. And so we'll kind of take both of those together. We come back with some ideas and show some allocations of time for these different activities. And then it kind of helps you get a sense of what needs to occur when. We can lay many of these things out that are happening simultaneously and some of them are happening sequentially and figure out what goes where to show you. We've done some of that already. We'll just need that data.
Okay, I think the game plan, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jared, would be to bring this document back with maybe a few minor tweaks here and there that still need to be made for this body to bless, if you will, at our next meeting, to become kind of the game plan for the decision making.
And we can't bless it today because it is not final, or because it's not on our agenda, or?
It's on the agenda today is to get your discussions, your input.
So we can bless it today, no?
Discussion and
No, we
review.
can't. Oh,
Which you need to come back on the 21st.
always likes to. Just like a dance.
The 21st, okay, I'll vote for it now. I'm giving mine.
So do I. I think it's a very good.
Well, and the goal would also to be to have the one complete that incorporates the MPEV. Now, understanding that there are external forces to that one, but the same process is going to work.
Yeah.
It just might have a different kickoff.
You start with the high point.
I think the committee's gonna continue to work on the lease agreement to move forward, so we're not waiting on this.
No. Working on the lease agreement, not waiting on this.
Right. Well, those two committee members present will forward their schedules. We'll continue.
We had a discussion when you left the
Yeah.
room earlier about when we might try to do that. We were talking.
I think.
Well, we can talk right now, we were talking Wednesday, are we talking about Wednesday?
Like
Next-
9 o'clock Wednesday, that's what I got. What'd you get?
Dave, next one.
Next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday.
If not, yeah.
We were trying to get,
All right.
we were trying to get you,
Today.
trying to get you out.
I
of
could
the
do it, I could do it Monday at 9 o'clock, Tuesday at 9 o'clock, so. and
But
we
there's no
can do
chance
it
7:30.
3 days next week.
About 7:30.
At 9.
About 7:30.
Oh, of course.
So Jared, we kind of landed on Wednesday the 14th,
PM.
but that was contingent from your.
Love to be available. Wednesday.
9 o'clock? 9 o'clock, William?
9 o'clock, fine, me. I love 9 o'clock. 9 o'clock Wednesday.
It's better than 8.
Well, yeah, just, you know, we've got a week to get a bunch of stuff done, so if you want to do it every morning at 9 o'clock. So don't be blaming the delay on me, boys.
Now,
So
you
we're-
know about the document.
Yes,
Not
documents.
Okay, yeah. Not,
I'm say quiet.
not the board.
So have you become like Sims, you don't work anymore?
No, I'm here to serve mankind.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Do the Lord's work.
That's right.
All right, that concludes item number 3. Item number 4 on the agenda, let's call for a closed session. And I think we'll take advantage